This is the most ridiculous build I've ever attempted. It's a Muff, a Klon, a Hall Reverb, all crammed into one box. And the mad part is, even if you're a beginner, you could still build this very pedal. No menus, no presets, just pure analog chaos. It's my attempt to build a mythical pedal with one pedal to rule them all. And if you think I got through this build without making any mistakes, think again. I messed up the wiring at one crucial point, and if you don't want to mess up your wiring, stay tuned and you'll find out exactly how I fixed it. If you grew up on proper analog pedals and you hate scrolling through endless menus and talking yourself out of good tone, you'll want to stay tuned to the end of this video and see how this pedal ends up. So this is everything we're going to use today to make our multi-effects pedal. One pedal to rule them all. First up, the enclosure. Come on, tell me that ain't awesome. I don't know. Because we're using a Klon style circuit, I thought that we'd go with a bit of Klon artwork and mix it in with a bit of Lord of the Rings. Why not? Let me know in the comments what you think of this artwork and what you think of this enclosure in general. The enclosure itself is actually black, metallic black, desert sand and white burst. I don't know where I come up with the idea for that one. Quick promise. Before the end of this video, you'll see a Muff, a Klon and a Hall Reverb all living inside this enclosure. And if you like what you see, this pedal and much more will be available in a link in the description. That'll take you through to hellosailoreffects.com, where you can buy all of my handmade custom pedals. Thank you for buying pedals. It's how we fund the show and it really does help keep this dream alive. So what are we going to fit in here? Well, we've got a few different things that we're going to fit in. First up is going to be this bad boy. It's an op-amp Muff fuzz from my buddies over at Fuzz Dog Effects DIY. Now, to be fair, I've built all of these already because you've seen me build a million of these before, and there's build guides and what have you. This video is mainly going to be focused on everything else. So how do we wire up our jacks? How do we wire up our stomp switches? How do we wire up 3 effects pedals in the same enclosure? That's the goal for today. Anyway, so first up, we've got our Muff fuzz. Then we're leaning heavily into the Chinese cheap DIY area. We've got a Klon. So this is a Klon Centaur clone from China. It's a pretty cheap one, if you like, but these are well made. But why not get it in here, which is where the old horsey comes from. And the Klon's going to sit in these 3 holes over here. Last but not least, no one can have a pedal without a time-based effect. So we've got our digital reverb. We've got the Accutronics reverb brick, and this is a Fuzz Dog reverb. So what's it called? It's called the Verb. There you go. It's basically a 2-knob reverb that uses an Accutronics brick. That's going to sit in these 2 holes here and be activated by this switch. Now, the main thing is, how are we going to get all of this to work together as one cohesive pedal? How are we going to wire it all in? That's the goal of this video. Before we wire in the signal path, I'm going to go ahead and draw out exactly how we get our signal from our jacks through all of our stomp switches and then back out again. I'll also show you the areas where we connect each pedal to the 3-pole double throw switches, so you can use this format for all of your pedals. It doesn't matter how many you connect together. You can have a multi-effects pedal with 20 pedals if you want. It's up to you. The principles stay the same. You can just add more stomp switches. Okay, so this is the Joe Age 5 moment. I'm going to show you on paper how I wire up all of these 3-pole double throw switches. So first of all, we have our input, and I am just drawing blocks here because, let's face it, an artist I am not. There's our output. And this pedal's upside down, by the way. So in, out. Now we've got our 3 stomp switches. 1, 2, 3. Well done, Joe Age 5. This is why my daughter don't let me draw in a drawing book normally, which, let's face it, this is. She's going to kill me. Right. These are our tags on our stomp switches. So we have 3 switches of 3. Don't worry, I'll explain all in a second. So, a stomp switch. If you imagine these stomp switches, and I have explained this before, so people who have heard it before, I apologise, but this is a beginner build, so let's go down to the bare bones of it. If you think these 3-pole double throw stomp switches are 3 separate switches, so you have this switch here, and this switch here. And if you think of them independently, it helps. Even though they all switch together, but think of them independently. This here is our common. And what happens is we can either switch it to here or to here. So if our input from our input jack, we send a wire around here and we come up to this pin here. Now we can either switch our input to go to this tag here or to this tag here. And if we switch it to go to this tag here, what we do is we add a little loop in. This is the bit that I always forget to put in, always. Anyway, that's our bypass loop. And so then we come to this switch, and we can either have this switch here, it can either be connected here, or it can be connected here to our loop. And this is our output side. So our output of this here, there's one circuit, if you like, one pedal. Now, because this is our input, this here goes to our guitar effects pedal, because that's our input to our guitar effects pedal. The signal will come from our guitar through here and into the input. So we're going to have this as our muff fuzz. So that the circuit will go into the pedal here, and it'll come out of the muff fuzz. I don't know why I'm drawing it at the side. I just am. It'll come out of the muff fuzz and go back to this tag here. So now when our two switches, we can either switch it to here, which is connecting it to the fuzz, which also connects the fuzz back here because this side's connected, or we can switch it this way, which connects to our bypass loop and out again, which means that the muff doesn't get touched at all. And then we just repeat the same for each of these switches. So now this goes, the output of this switch, instead of it going to the output of our pedal like we normally would, we just send it to the next switch. So it goes here, and then our next circuit, if I remember correctly, was our Klon. And so the input of the Klon just goes in the same manner, and the output of the Klon comes back to this tag here. And then, of course, we've got to have our bypass loop so then we can have our clean signal. So when the switches switch the opposite way, it goes to our bypass loop. And then our output can either be connected to the Klon or to the bypass loop. And our output of here goes to the input of the next pedal, so on and so forth. And as you can see, you could have 20 of these switches in a row. It's absolutely fine. It all works just the same. So you can keep adding and adding and adding. Of course, you have impedance issues and needing a buffer if you have too many of them, which we all know from our pedal boards. Maybe I'll do a video on that at some point. But anyway, our last circuit is our reverb. And so we can go to our reverb, come back from our reverb, and we have our little bypass loop. Now, because we've got no more switches to go now, the output of this one simply goes to our output. There. So if we were to follow our whole signal chain, if all the pedals were disengaged, so everything's off, we're going to have our guitar here. I nearly tried to draw the guitar then. Oh, come on, let's go. There's our guitar. Brilliant. So from our guitar, we go to our input. It'll come round our input wire and come here. And because we're switched to all the pedals are off position, it's the bypass loop. So the signal will come through here and go down here. We come to this switch. This one's turned off too. So we go through our bypass loop, through this wire, and then this one's turned off and selected to this side as well. So we go through our bypass loop and then to the output. But what happens if we turn all the pedals on? Well, it's the exact same thing, only the reverse. Because each of these stomp switches, you can either connect the middle switches to this side or the middle switches to this side. So if they're all engaged, our signal is going to come from the input, go this way to our muff, back from our muff all distorted and sustainy, and come out here. And then it's going to go into our Klon for a bit of mid-push and magic, and come out here. And then it's going to go through here and to our reverb for a bit of space, and then out. And you can repeat this as many times as you like. Now, someone's going to say, what's going on with the middle rank, Joe? And of course I'm going to say middle rank because I'm a sailor and standing in the squad is what we do. So the middle rank, these three here, let's show you. The center pin, this one here, goes to ground. So ground on a circuit is drawn like this, whatever. So it goes to ground. Now, what we do is, this side here, when the circuit is engaged, i.e. this tag here is attached to this tag, this tag's attached to this one, and this one's attached to this one. When that's engaged, we want the light to be on, the LED to be on. So what we do is, we run a wire from this pin here, and that goes to our LED. I don't know how you draw the light on a circuit. I'm Joe age 5 there. And then from our LED, we go to a resistor, and then to our positive voltage. So what happens there is, our resistor, our positive voltage, the 9 volts that we get from our power supply, comes through this current limiting resistor. You see them labelled sometimes as CLR on diagrams and stuff. Doesn't really matter. But it goes through our current limiting resistor and to the LED. And then from the LED, if it goes to earth, the LED will turn on because the current is flowing. It's kind of like an on-off switch. So when the pedal is engaged and this center lug, the ground, is this way attached, when the circuit's attached, the LED will come on because 9 volts can go through the resistor, through the LED, through the switch and to ground. But when we go the other way and we go to our bypass, well, actually the ground is now connected to nothing. So there's nowhere for this voltage to go. So it just stops there. It can't get to ground and the LED doesn't turn on. Fantastic. Now, what else can we do that I didn't do in this video? If you want to be really a smart arse, and this is something I learned off Marcus Reeves, I'm embarrassed to say I've only just learned it, even though I've been building pedals for well over 15 years. In fact, it's about 18 years now. Anyway, I've been building pedals a long time. If we were then to connect this back lug here, just as a little bit of extra, a little extra nugget that I didn't do, by the way, in this video, we can go round and attach that to our input of our pedal. And what happens then? Well, when the pedal's engaged, the ground is connected to our LED just the same. We get a nice bright LED and everything works. But if it's not engaged and it goes the other way, well, this ground is now connected to the input of our circuit. And what that does is remove the voltage or the signal going to the input of the circuit, which means that the circuit's completely quiet. Why does that matter, you might ask? Well, the circuit isn't connected to the signal physically, but it is connected to the power supply. So sometimes noisy circuits, especially fuzz pedals, overdrive pedals, that sort of thing, they can emit noise through the power supply. So if you ground it out in this manner, it takes that away and it just makes the pedal a little bit quieter when they're off. Now let's see if we can put it in action. And first things first, because of the way that this enclosure is, we're going to have our 3 LEDs situated inside the enclosure here. But this, the Klon, is also going to be an enclosure sat over the top of them. So how are we going to achieve this? Well, first of all, I'm going to get in my jacks and my stomp switches. We'll get them fitted. Then we'll stick in the LEDs so then they're in position. Then we'll wire the LEDs in before we start adding in all of our circuits. Right, here's the plan. We're taking a Muff fuzz for that endless sustain, and because Mr. Craze Fandango keeps banging on about me building one. And then we're going to take a Klon for that mid-pushed harmonic content that we all know and love. And then a lush Hall Reverb that'll have long trails and add a bit of space to the sound. We're going to force all 3 of these circuits to behave together in this cool looking enclosure. Let's face it, this shouldn't work, but it's going to. Now we've got all of our hardware fitted in, stomp switches and stuff. We've got our power jack and our in and out jacks. I've glued in with some epoxy our 3 LEDs. Now before we get to them, underneath where our Klon's going to be, we're going to need to supply the LEDs with 9 volts. And this is how I'm going to do it. So I'm using just a strip of tag board, three tags, and then I've got 3 1.5k resistors. Why 1.5k? Well, normally I'll use anywhere between 5k and 10k, and that makes the LEDs kind of dull. But for this one, I'm going to make them super bright, and these high precision resistors, rather expensive, and they're also low profile, so that's going to be amazing, because I'm going to have to sneak this underneath where the Klon PCB is going to be. So why not? How are we going to do this? Well, I want to join all 3 of these together, and the easiest way to do that is just to do it with the leg of one of my resistors. So if I put this resistor through here, use my Nip-X snips, everyone's got to have a set of Nip-X snips, right? I use my Nip-X snips to bend the leg over, and then I can just bend the leg back on itself like so. There, kind of like a Z. Now I can solder these in, or a Z for my American fellows. I'm going to solder this first LED in just to hold it in place. Like so. Then what we need to do is we need to get it to solder the back of each one of these pots. So I'm just going to wrap it round like that, so then it's kind of got a good mechanical connection. Not that that really matters, but it just makes me feel good. So there you go. Why do we do anything? So there's the first 2 pots soldered. I'm not going to solder that last one, and that's because that's where the 9 volt from our DC jack is going to come from. It's from right here. So we've got that in place. Now I'm not actually going to solder in the other 2 LEDs until it's in our enclosure. Here we have it in the enclosure. all I'm going to do is just grab hold of the resistor and bend the leg round so it meets the first LED's live connection. And I'm going to attach it really low down. And that's because we're going to have our Klon circuit sitting over the top. And I don't want it to foul the top of that. So we can solder that in place. There we go. And then just cut off the excess and you'll see that this LED is now going to be underneath where the Klon's going to sit, which is nice. And now we can just repeat the process for the other two. It's always good to have your flat nose Nipex snips just to bend and flatten these legs out. When I was coming up with the idea for this pedal, I was really conflicted with what I was going to do with it. So the goal was to teach people how to wire up multiple effects in the same enclosure. But of course, what to do with the pedal afterwards. Usually I'll do some sort of giveaway or get a friend to do a demo or whatever. And I was really conflicted. But then I asked my wife, she said, well, why don't you just sell the pedal like it's a normal pedal? It just feels weird doing that because it's like a kit build. But this is going to be nothing like a kit build because, you know, it's a nitrocellulose finished enclosure. I've built it. It's got 3 different effects in it. So it's not like you can buy a standard kit. So I figured, do you know what? She's right. So I will be selling this pedal and it will be on sale in the website as we speak. So if you've heard that, it's probably sold by now, I would have thought, or at least hope so. Yeah, I don't know. I'm really conflicted about doing the kit build stuff because I know it brings value to you guys. So it's obviously worth doing. But it kind of feels like cheating to me rather than getting all the components myself and building, you know, my own version of whatever. It's a tough one. I'd love to know what people think about that. Am I cheating by doing this or is it okay for me to do the kit build thing now and again so then I bring some value to you guys so you get to see how it's built? And of course, the thing with Fuzzdog is they ship everywhere. So they ship to the US, they ship to Europe and stuff. So you'll be able to buy these circuits wherever you are. All I'm going to do is just bend this leg up to stop it from falling out of the tag every time I go to solder it. Like that. There you go. And wet the tip. Well, hey. Try and bend that under there and get it onto the live connection. Of course, with our LEDs, the live is the longer leg. The shorter leg is the earth, and the live is the longer leg. There's all of our lives in. Next step is to wire in the 9 volts. Now, we also want 9 volts to go to our pedals. So all of our circuits are going to have a 9 volt connection. So what I'm going to do is I'll probably put another tag board maybe somewhere in the middle here for the 9 volts. I don't know. I've got to think about this because our fuzz is going to be here on the input. Great. Then we're going to have our reverb over here somewhere, probably here. So where's convenient to put the 9 volts for all of these pedals? It's probably going to be here in front of this. I don't know what you think. I don't want to put it anywhere over this way because we're going to have our Klon over this side. So anyway, for this little bit, all I'll do is I'll make one long wire so it can reach all over the enclosure, wherever I decide to put it. And then another wire, a shorter one, which is going to go to our LED live. And then to put these into the jack, all I'm going to do is I'll take a length of wire long enough to go through both of our holes because we don't use batteries in these pedals. It's bad for the environment and it's a pain. Who wants to use a battery? And because it's going to be going through these small tags, what I like to do is I use my Nipex snips to fan out the strands of the wire, and then I cut half of them off. Inadvertently, while you're learning how to do this or while you're practicing your craft, you're going to cut too much off, too little off, and everything in between. Don't worry about that. This wire is fairly cheap to buy if you buy it in bulk, so I would suggest just getting a big roll of it and you can cut as much as you like. Now I'll twist them two together to make one single wire. Perfect. This wire is really easy to work with, to be fair. And if you want to get your own, there is links in the description to the exact stuff that I use. it is an affiliate link, so I do get a bit of a kickback. So far, I've managed to buy, with royalties from Amazon, a set of flat nose Nipex snips, a set of snips, actual snips, and also a light, like a blue light that I use for the talking head parts of videos or the podcast, and just to add a bit of colour to the back of my head. Now I'm just going to slot this through both of the holes, if I can get it to go in, that is. And this time I'm actually going to remember to use my flat nose pliers so that I don't chop the wires in half, because we all know I've done that a few times. And now I can solder both of these in because there's nothing else going in here, which is ideal. Now, our longer leg, we're just going to leave out the way for now. We'll tuck that behind, because that's going to go to our little live hub, if you like. But the shorter leg is going to come round and go into the tag that we didn't solder before. And that's because that's our live supply to our LEDs. On most of these PCBs, actually, the kits that I'm using today, there is a LED resistor and live on the board that you could use, so you could just run the wire from the board straight to each of these LEDs. I don't do that because I wanted to show exactly how I wire all of my pedals up LED wise. I didn't want to kind of cheat and use the LED on the board. So apologies to Fuzzdog and Co for me not using their PCBs the way that they intend. Kind of story of my pedal building career, that not using things the way that they were meant to be used, but there you go. Right, so there we have the live wired in for all of our LEDs. Now we're going to move on to the earth, so the ground, the leg that's left over, the shorter leg. I'm going to run wires around the outside of the enclosure, and it's going to come to our 3-pole double throw switch. Now for each switch, it's this front center pin, or Jimmy, if you're watching me, it's the back center pin. He always calls them the other way around because he's looking at it as, you know, the back as in away from you as opposed to the back of the pedal. I don't know. Maybe it's me that's upside down here. Anyway, this front center pin here, we're going to run a wire from each of our earths. So the red LED, the wire is going to run round the enclosure and come up and go to the center pin here. Same with the blue for the center and same with the green for this stomp switch over here. And it doesn't matter how many pedals you've got and how many LEDs you've got, you can run them in the same way. You could have 20 if you like, 20 stomp switches, 20 LEDs, and as long as you're putting the earth to the center pin on the front rank, all is good. So how do I attach the wire to this LED leg? Well, that's easy. First of all, I strip a bit of it and give it a twist because it's stranded wire and I want a solid core. And I don't advise that you get solid core wire until you're much more advanced. It's harder to deal with when you're manipulating wires round. It's easy to snap one. Then I'll tin it anyway, as I say. And then what I like to do is the hook and loop method, or what I call the hook and loop method anyway. I take about halfway down a bit of tin to just twist it round so it makes a loop. Snip off the excess so you've got like a hook. And then all we have to do is slide the hook over the leg that we want to solder it to and give it a little squeeze. I do advise you use the flat nose, the flat Nipex snips, these ones, as opposed to the cutters, but inadvertently I always use the cutters because they're in my hand already. Then I solder the wire straight to the leg. There. And then all you have to do is clip off the excess. Voila! Now it's attached to your LED. These 3 circuits have their own legends and they're legendary in their own rights. Let's take the Muff, the up-amp Muff. Billy Corgan made this thing sound great and he's a bit of an oddball. The Klon is probably the most talked about, the most loved, the most hated pedal of all time, all at once. And that reverb sound that's kept every guitarist up until 2 AM in the morning, twiddling knobs and trying to get the right sound. But it's also going to be the glue that holds this together. Now let's see if I can wire up the signal path so then all these 3 beasts come together in one big beautiful pedal to rule them. So there we have all of our LEDs now wired in. I also went ahead and fitted our second tag board, and that's to allow me to attach all of our live wires from our PCBs straight to it. Now, before we fit our PCBs in here, I've got to sort out the earths, the ground. Now, our grounds need to attach to the ground connection on our DC jack. That's the main one. It's going to have to go to each ground connection on our input and output jacks. Now, you don't have to fit them in there, but I like to do it anyway. I know they're grounded through the enclosure, but I just feel like if this jack undoes, like in a gig or something, maybe the nut comes loose, you'll lose your earth connection and lose sound, so that's not happening. Then it needs to come round and go to the centre pin in the middle rank of all three of our 3-pole double throw switches. How are we going to achieve that? Well, I like to add in some of this. So this is actually like transformer wire, copper coated wire, and you can get this through the link in my description. Ha, selfless plug. What I like to do is just take a strip of it that will reach over both jacks and also into our DC jack. Give it a snip. This is rather thick, this stuff. And I use it because it's going to add a bit of like mechanical sturdiness to the whole thing. And what I do is, I know people hate it, I use my Stanley blade to scrape off all of the coating where I'm going to solder. So there'll be this end here, I'm going to scrape off. And people are going to say, why aren't you using, I don't know, sandpaper, emery cloth, a file, all of this stuff? Well, I do it this way because this is the way that I've always done it, and I like to do it this way. So there we go. And this is going to slot through here. It's just thick enough to go through this here. And then, of course, the other two bits that are going to get soldered are over the top of our two jacks. So I'll scrape off the coating on them too. As you can see, we've got our earth bar now in place. I don't know if it's called an earth bar, but whatever. Now in place. It's only soldered into our DC jack. Before I solder into each of these, I'm going to attach some stuff to it. So for this one here, I'm going to attach one long wire, which is going to go round. I'm going to go round to the center pin of our 3-pole double throw switch over here. So what I like to, actually, I like to cut these just probably a bit longer than is needed. And then give it a bit of a tin. And all I'm going to do is, I'm going to follow the same wire and loom that we've got. So it's going to come up round the back and go into our earth connection. And the reason that I'm only fitting one wire is we're going to piggyback from our first switch to the next switch, and then from that switch to the next switch, just so then we haven't got loads and loads of wire going around the enclosure. Although I do like to fit lots of wire so I can cable tie it in. I know Glyn loves me putting a good cable tie in there. Now this wire is going to run round the enclosure, round the outside edge of the enclosure, nice and easy. The reason why I'm running all these wires before fitting the PCBs in, it means that I won't have to try and slide the wire underneath the PCB. I mean, you could put the PCB in first if you wanted. It is up to you. And then this is going to go to that center pin at the back. But I'm not going to put it in there. What I am going to do is just snip it there. And then to add the link to the next 3-pole double throw switch, all I do is I marry up the two cables together, our new cable and the one that we've just run round. And I can just snip them and give them a twist. That means that the two bits of insulation are at the same distance. They sort of like line up. And then we can give that a tin. Doesn't really matter how long these are because you can always snip it off once it's in. So then I'm just going to slot that through the center pin and solder that in place, and then we can sort out the wire afterwards. There we go. Now we can just run that wire around as we did before. I always like to use my screwdriver to position the wire in place. I don't know why I do that, I just always have. See what I've done here? The wire is going round this side of the back pin, and I want it to go round the right hand side of the back pin. Why? Because I always put it round the right hand side, no other reason. But it has to go the way that I'm thinking, otherwise it drives me insane. Then we're going to run the next wire round, and it's just going to do the same thing. If I can ever pull it round. It's going to slot into our wiring loom, and then it's going to come up and go to the center pin of our next 3-pole double throw switch, and then we'll just do the same thing again. Give them a twist and a tin, and then we slot that in, and then we can run this next wire around to the center pin of our last switch, and that is all of them attached to here. Right, so we've got all that in place, and now I've also added this little tag board strip here, which is just 4 tags joined together. And what I'm going to do is I'll run a wire from our input jack, the ground, right the way round to this, and then that gives me something to run the grounds to from our circuit without going round this way, because really once the Klon tag board goes in, I don't want to be wiring anything up this end. I know that most people would say don't run your earth wires and your live wires around with your signal wire and stuff like that, and for amplifiers that's true, but I like it to look neat, so I'm just going to run it the way that it looks best. I'd love to know if you disagree with that. That's fine. It'd be interesting to know why. Okay, so now that's in, let's get it soldered and snip off the excess of our 2 wires, or 2 ends, sorry. There we go. Now that's in place, we can go ahead and get our circuits now in place, so we can fit our Klon in first. Hopefully it's going to sit over the top of them LEDs without much hassle, possibly. I might have to put a few washers on the top of the pots to stop them from fouling the top of the LEDs, but we'll see. Or maybe I'll put some rubber over the top of them. I made a mistake. I made a massive mistake. This is the bit where planning really comes into it. So what did I do? I ignored the instructions. I'm a typical man, what can I say? I took the Klon instructions, I threw them out, I didn't follow them, and that meant that I wired it in wrong. If you've ever built one of these Klons before, you probably did. In true fashion, no plan survives contact with the enemy, so I've had to remove some wires. And they are the wires joining to our Klon switch. And because the Klon is wired up, the Lantone kit I've got is just wired up insane. So we have these 6 wires here that go to our on-off switch. And they run 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I can show you the diagram that I found online of a guy who's done this kit as a build kit. I'll link that in the description. And then the input and output of our circuit comes from these 2 wires here. Because of course they're not thinking about integrating this into a whole ecosystem. They're thinking about just making a kit with just the Klon in. So there's our input and output. Now our input is going to have to come from our jack, or fuzz jack if you like, because that goes into the pedal, and then we use this to switch it. so complex when we don't need to. So this input wire is going to go to here, the output of our fuzz, and our output wire is going to go to here, which is the input of our reverb. Now if you're not building one of these Klon circuits into your multi-effects pedal, you won't have to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and get this wired in properly. I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who supported the show buying pedals. Last month was a record month for me. I cannot believe it. Thank you so much. If you do want to support the show, follow the link in the description or the pinned comment, and that'll take you through to my store, where I have all my handmade boutique guitar effects pedals for sale, and each pedal you buy really does help the show. Thank you so much for supporting the show. It means the world to me. I actually forgot how much of a pain in the arse it is to wire these things in, but there you go. Now last, I've got the 9-volt and the live for our Klon. Stupidly enough, I've cable tied all this in, so to run round to these 2 tags here that I was going to run them to means I'm going to have to unclip the cable ties and feed loads of stuff through, which I don't want to do. So I'm just going to run them straight over to our ground here and our live over here. So this leg here, the furthest towards the back of the pedal, is the ground. So I'm going to run that across, and it's going to come up and just join onto this here. Easy enough. And to do that, I'm just going to snip the wire, strip it, and then tin it, and we'll do the hook and loop method round our earth buzz bar, if you like. I know I should run it all the way around to here, but I'm just not going to. Oh, and tin that very well. Well done, Joe. We'll run that round and solder it onto there. You'll see that there's a center hole there, and that's because that's for the switch position, i.e. the battery position, and there's two little things over here for the battery if you're going to wire it in as an actual pedal. But the kit comes with instructions. I've got to be honest, I'm not keen, as viewers will know, on batteries in pedals unless you've got an old school fuzz, in which case fair enough, but it's just not for me. Now this one I'm going to run round and just going to attach it to the 9V directly on the jack. There we go. Now that should be our Klon fully wired in. Now it's time to add in our other two effects. So we've got our fuzz, which is a Muff fuzz. Again, with this kit you get some awesome build instructions from FuzzDog. They're some of the OGs in the DIY pedal game. The kits are amazing. And it's a nice easy circuit to do. If you were thinking of a beginner circuit, the op-amp Muff is a great one. We're not going to use this little tag on our pot. You get that all the time on pots because they used to have like a little tiny hole drilled next to the pot to keep them in place, or some consoles and what have you used to. I don't do that. It's not for me. This isn't going to fit straight in the pedal because I've got all stuff around it, which is going to be a bit of a pain. So what I'm going to do is, before I get to that, I'm just going to put a cable tie over here to tidy up these cables and keep them out of my way. And then also later on, when I come to cable tie it, it's going to be really difficult because this circuit's going to be in the way. So we might as well get that in now. Everyone knows I love a good cable tie in a pedal. There. And that kind of tidies that up and keeps it out the way. Now to fit this in, as I said before, it's not going to go in straight because it's going to foul the edge of the enclosure. It can't go in sideways because it's going to foul this PCB. So we're just going to have it in like that. I'd love to know what sort of pots you think I should choose for this. Some knobs I should choose for this. I did have some awesome ones with gold inserts, but the problem is they're really big. So I think that center one would cover my my Golem Klon a little bit, and I'm not keen on that. So maybe I won't use them. But I don't know. I'm thinking about just straight black Bakelite knobs. We'll see. The problem is these ones are splined and these ones are like fat, straight up shafts, and it's really hard to get a set that works with both of them, or that looks good with both of them. I don't know. So there's our Muff fitted. Now the Muff is going to attach to this tag here, to this on-off switch, because the pedal's upside down. So our on-off, our input is this one. So this is going to be the Muff. Because this circuit is attached to the pot, there's only really 4 wires to go for. And if you look at our PCB, it actually has what is what on the back of the PCB. So the first wire we come to is our input. Now the input of our pedal is this first lug over in this corner here. So I'm going to run my wires down, and I'm going to come round into the wiring loom in this corner, go round and up the back of the ponytail. This corner is getting quite congested now, and then it's going to go up and meet our switch over here. It is getting a little bit congested, but we have got 3 effects worth of cables going through that little bit there. Right, so this is our input, and then the opposite side of this switch here is our output, and this is our output. So I'm just going to do the same. I'm going to run that round, and it's going to come up and meet here. Now that our input and output sorted, it's time to sort out the voltage and the ground. Now first up is voltage. That's going to go to this tag board here, and that's because it's attached to our 9 volts via this cable here. And then the ground is going to go round to this board here. There's that now fully wired in. The last but not least is this. So where's this going to go? I think I'm going to fit that this way round, and then I can run the wires either round this way to the switch directly or over to the pots in this side here. Speaking of which, the pots are here. Now the pots are kind of awkward because they've got these long legs. They're meant for attaching directly to the board, which I'm not going to do. Of course I'm not. So let's get the pots in and then we can figure out what we're doing. There's the pots wired in for our reverb. All we've got to do now is add in the input, output and the live and the ground. So what we got? Our first one again is the input, then we've got voltage, then we've got ground. So the input is going to go to this tag here, or this end pin of our 3-pole double throw switch. Now normally I would run that right the way around the enclosure and then tie it in, but it's getting a bit congested this end, so I'm not going to. I'm going to go the shortest route possible, which is pretty much against my ethos in any other manner, so I apologise to all my followers and viewers who like me being extravagant and over the top. I'm going to be a little bit boring here and just go straight over to this pin here. And then same again for the output, which is this end wire over here. This one. I'm going to go round the back, follow the same wiring loom so I can get some cable ties in there, and then just drop it straight in onto the 3-pole double throw switch, onto the tag that we need. This is going to shorten them wires, which I know that some of my more conservative viewers will prefer. But more importantly, I don't think them wires were long enough to reach right the way round, so I would have had to extend them, which I'm just not too keen on. There we go, input and output wires complete. Now we've got to run our 9-volt and our ground. So the first one is the 9-volt, which is this. I'm going to follow this wiring loom that we've just put in place round, and then I'm just going to tuck it round the back of all of this. If I can ever find my screwdriver, tuck it round the back, and then I'm going to come up and attach to our 9-volt here. It's going to be so satisfying when I get the cable ties in this and all these wires floating around the place get pulled in. It does my head in, this bit. Should really test the pedal before I put the cable ties in, but I just can't help myself because it's so messy. It makes me feel cluttered. Must be the Navy man in me coming out there. So we took that round the back. That's in. Now the last one is the ground, and that's going to go into this tag here. Again, we're just going to follow this little wiring loom here so we can get some cable ties in that and it'll look nice and neat. I'd love to know what people think of these massive builds with like 2 or 3 circuits in the same thing. I know these are cheaper circuits, you know, they're like DIY kits or what have you, but it does add up and it makes the pedal more expensive. Would you prefer this, or are you a single pedal guy like myself? Right, there's that all in place. Now we need our little loops. So to make our loops, what I'm going to do is get 3 wires, line them up at one end, and then snip them all together at the other end. And now we've got 3 identical loops, if you like, and then I can skin them all together because then they are going to be the same size. And all we do is twist each end like so, and now we can tin them individually just like this. Of course, I've cut the ends way too long, but that doesn't matter because we just cut them down. As long as the insulation is all the same length, they'll look right inside the pedal, which is pretty much the goal of that bit. I probably don't advise soldering over the top of your pedal because likelihood of it is you're going to drop a solder blob right in the middle of it. Speaking from experience. There we go. And we can shorten them down like so, and it's easy enough to fit them. Oh, I'm not going to have a... So that centre one isn't going to have a loop because it's actually wired through the PCB. So it's just, I only need 2. Oh well. There we are. At the very least, it should work in bypass. Unless, of course, I've wired this Klon thing in the wrong way around, which is entirely possible. I've built a few of these DIY Chinese Klon things before, and I always mess up the signal wire going to this 3-pole double throw switch. In fact, I have 2 different videos where first one I just build a cheap beginner kit, and then the second one I build a one with like some fancy components and diodes and whatnot. I think they were some of my first videos, funnily enough, when I was still Still didn't have a space to film, so I was doing it in my desk in work. Apologies to anyone who works in my office who ended up with wire all over the place. Quick tidy up of them. There. Now we just need to get some cable ties in there. Here we have the finished pedal ready to go. I did go with these brown Klon style miniature knobs that come with the Klon kit. Of course, I've got a few Klon kits, so I managed to get 6 of them. I think they look pretty cool on there with this artwork and the desert sand burst finish. Underneath the hood, this is what we're working with. I mean, come on. Tell me that isn't awesome. We've got some nice neat blue wires going around the place. There's a lot of tag board. I wish there was a lot of tag board. There's a lot of PCBs floating around in there. But to me, that's pretty good. I like how it looks. I like how the whole pedal feels. It feels quite premium, quite solid. Now, we need to know how it sounds. And now it's that time again. It is, of course, the sound sample. But before we get to the sound sample, if you want to support Hello Sailor Effects, please go to hellosailoreffects.com, link in the description and the pinned comment. Buy pedals. It's how we fund the show. Thank you so much to everyone who's bought pedals so far. Last month was literally the best month I've had all year. So thank you. Now, let's hear if this thing really does rule them. So does this pedal really rule them all? Well, not really. But if you're a beginner and you build a pedal like this, no doubt it's going to rule them all. It's going to be way better than that endless scrolling and the tone chasing that you get into with all these digital, messy, whatever. It's not my thing. I feel like you spend more time tweaking and less time playing. And let's face it, I'm literally the most guilty person in the world of tweaking pedals and getting my old soldering iron out instead of playing guitar. I do it all the time. Thank you for watching the video so far. If you've made it this far through, please write in the comments one pedal to rule them all. Let me know that you've got this far. Thank you for supporting the show. And if you love this video, you're going to love this video.